So welcome back. We've been talking about the Surface Duo, Brett and Matt here. We wanted to talk in this video about some of the problems with the Surface Duo 2. It's been pretty well publicized that the software is not perfect. In fact, most of the reviewers and articles that have been written have, pretty heavily slammed Microsoft for this. The Surface Duo 2 runs Android. It's just running a pretty vanilla version of Android. Microsoft bundle with it the Launcher app, which is their own sort of launcher app or skin, if you like, for the Surface Duo 2. In fact, you can get that on any other phone as well. I used to use the Microsoft Launcher on my Note 20. I think you did too, Matt.
Yeah, same here, yep.
But there has been a lot of bugs and issues that people are seeing. And if you have one of these phones, you're very familiar with them. The thing is that we talked about in the last video is that this device is really designed for the very early adopters, the people who absolutely get the concept and want to see what you could do, for example, with two screens on your phone instead of just one, right? So you're pretty committed if you bought one of these. They're pretty expensive devices as well. And generally, I'd find that most people who have that sort of commitment and also the vision together are going to overlook and put up with some issues. That's the thing about being on the bleeding edge, they say, is you bleed, right? So this is where we are in terms of technology.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pleasant necessarily. So I just want to talk about some of the issues that we're seeing. So
there certainly have been some bugs, and we'll talk about those in some detail. But I do want to say, just to preface that from I absolutely agree with you. Devices for early adopters. It's for those heavily invested. But I've got to say that everyone that's seen me with this device in public, if you like, or in my day-to-day life, has gone, "Oh, I want one of those. Where can I get it?"
Yeah.
So it's got a really interesting look, and it certainly looks like a premium device, and it's priced like a premium device, as you've said. But it does feel like a premium device, and
it does, and I think that's why, like when I've had the same experience with people, I'm not rushing out going, go and get one of these, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that the premium feel and the beautiful build quality and the hardware of the device doesn't necessarily match up with the software experience, and so to put up with that, you got to be bought in. Got to have a really good reason for using it. Sometimes it might be, some of those workflow scenarios that we talked about in the last session as well. But just sort of diving into what some of the problems that we're seeing are. Now, the first one that I want to talk about is gesture navigation, which is built in, I think, to Android by default. So there's certain gestures that you do, like swiping up to, what does that do? Minimize the app, or swiping up to see what apps are running, swiping left or right, depending on the screen you're on, to go back. Things like that. Now, I think that this is one of the key issues that people are seeing with Android on the Surface Duo 2 is related to that gesture navigation. Pretty quickly when I got my first Surface Duo 2, I turned it off. I actually switched to the 3-button navigation mode, which is kind of the old school way of navigating an Android device. Because what I was finding is certain touches or gestures that you would do, to me, looking at it, I'd say they didn't know which screen to operate on, or there was sort of a bit of confusion because there was two screens on the device. So there are issues that I think may be solved when the new version of Android 12L, that's designed specifically for dual screen phones, comes out. And Microsoft is saying they're going to release that sometime in the next year. But I was definitely seeing issues with that gesture navigation. Now, when I got the second version of this phone, when I lost the first one, I replaced it. I stuck with the gesture navigation for a little bit longer, probably about a week, and I gave it away again. But Matt, you're still using the gesture.
I still am using the gesture navigation. I found initially it took some getting used to. It was very precise, I found, and it's
a little bit finicky, right? There's not a lot of give in terms of, if you don't get that gesture precisely right,
pressure, sensitivity, and the location right, then it's not going to work. So you certainly go through some missed touches or some second runs at things. But I've stuck with that just to try and get used. And I do think that if you haven't come from a launcher background, that you're going to have some extra trouble in this space. If you've come from a vanilla Android or an iOS perspective, learning to use launcher will give you some extra trouble there as well. But I've stuck with gesture navigation, and I have had some bugs with how it treats screens. But I haven't found them something. It hasn't stopped me from you doing anything.
No, I'm the same. I mean, it didn't stop me from doing what I needed to do, but it's a little bit annoying when you get those missed touches, or there's no response and it doesn't do what you expect it to do, right?
Yeah.
That's frustrating. So for me, taking the frustration out was just switching the 3-button navigation on and then everything to me just responded the way I wanted to. But that is it's something that you need to do, configure out of the box, because by default it's running this gesture navigation. And like I said, I think maybe Android 12L might fix that problem whenever it arrives, whenever it comes out. But that was one thing that I saw, and I think most people are saying, missed touches. I would almost certainly say that's due to that navigation system not working as it should. So I think I'm going to put that in the category of an Android problem. That between Microsoft and Android, it'll be fixed in the next iteration, we hope. I initially, on my first device, I had some video playback problems. Every few days, I'd be like watching a video on Facebook or something like that. It would just go grindingly slow. It wouldn't play back properly. I have not seen this on the new device, and I don't know. There was an update that shipped in December.
I haven't seen that. I haven't had video playback issues on mine.
I had to reboot at the time to make it work. I haven't had to reboot this new one hardly at all to make things work, which is, again, the bleeding edge. It's been a little bit smoother the second time around. The other thing I had on the first one, I had some sort of Bluetooth sort of issues where it would just be a bit jittery, the playback, things like that. With I really don't wear these out in public, these Surface Buds, nor would I wear Apple AirPods. By the way, I hate those things. But I'm just using it for this video. But using these or using my car, mainly I use Bluetooth in the car, play Spotify, through the car stereo. And I'd find if it was in the back seat, if the kids were playing songs from the back seat, you could get a little bit of jittery playback. I haven't experienced that on the new one so far, but I would say that the Bluetooth wasn't up to the standard that I had on the Galaxy Note 20. It's just a sort of a minor complaint. Like I said, if it was in the front seat, I haven't had any issues at all with it. So that was just one little bug that I found.
Yeah, I haven't tested Bluetooth range. I have had some issues with NFC and using it to pay, and a certain type of card reader it just struggles with. But I've managed to get around that a few times just by redoing it. But that is, I'm a bit cautious about using it for NFC payments because there are definitely some of those card readers that just it doesn't like.
So the card reader is actually in the left-hand panel on the back here, the NFC chip. So, you sort of hold it and tap it down like that, and that's where you get those reactions from. What on earth have you got there? What is that? People look at you funny. But yeah, I've found the same. For some reason, it hasn't happened to me much in the last couple of weeks, and I think maybe it's just because I know where the NFC reader is and I'm more precise about putting it there.
Yeah, it took me a couple of goes to work out where it was as well. I found that, but I still have, I get an error message from the terminal that says you've moved it too fast.
Which, I got that one too.
Which, I'm holding it there. So how did it move too fast? I don't know. I don't know how that's they go. But
some bit of weirdness there with the NFC. But yeah, like I said, like you said, I've been paying for tons of stuff with it, and it's been pretty good and very nice to have, because the first Surface Duo didn't even have the NFC chip, right? And that's essential for us here in Australia.
And just while you're talking about bugs, you mentioned rebooting. The only thing I've really had to reboot for is I've had it a couple of times now, and this is most recently this week where I've plugged it into charge, and I'm using my Samsung USB-C wall charger to charge this because it comes with a charging cord, but not an actual charger.
Of course, yeah.
But I've found a couple of times now it's been plugged in. It tells me it's charging, but it hasn't, and the phone runs flat even when it's on power. Restarting has fixed that not recording charge issue, whatever's stopping it from charging, I don't know. But a reboot has addressed that.
Yep. And I've actually had the same issue, I think once, where it's frozen up because I've plugged it in. I use the same charger. So
I should say I had those issues with my other Galaxy Notes as well from time to time with various chargers. And certainly with the Note 20, we had an issue trying to charge from USB-A cables. It just really didn't like it at all.
We used to get those issues where it would say the charging port's got moisture in it, right, all the time, and that would drive you nuts. That was on the Note 10. I had that a lot, and it was very annoying. The other things that I've seen is a bit of weirdness with the two screens. Like, for example, I'm not sure if it's still there, but there's a bug with the launcher. Across on the left-hand side of the launcher app, you can see what they call, I think, the glance screen, or I'm not sure what they call it actually, but it's your calendar, your task list, things like that. It's really great to have that information there. But I found like if you turn it one way and then the other, it does some weirdness. I'm not sure if we can reproduce that and maybe show it here. Mostly it works just fine, but if you're in portrait mode, it does something weird. So, just a few things that just don't align themselves to that 3:2 aspect ratio. In fact, apps like Instagram, for example, I find really problematic on the 3x2 display. They're just not well optimized for that. They're more, aligned for those very narrow, tall
Screens,
handy bar phones. So, scrolling through when somebody posts multiple photos, being able to see the next photo along, I find
really difficult.
It's really difficult. Being able to see people's stories, they don't come out in the right aspect ratio. What I've found though is that switching into the sort of portrait mode and spanning the app across the two screens works much better.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a compromise there for that, but it is, this is just stuff that's a bit, what would you say, rough around the edges, because app developers, they're not going to see a million Surface Duo 2s out there and go, I really need to target this device. Not yet. So you're going to have to put up with apps that aren't optimized to that 3x2 display. They're looking for a display that's much narrower and taller.
We really haven't seen that much in productivity-based apps, though, have we, right? So consumer-driven apps, we're going to find some of these issues. But again, the productivity stuff, there's not... I'm trying to think now of things that I would like to happen.
I think the whiteboard app, at the moment, and the whiteboard app's been a bit of a debacle in Microsoft, but the new whiteboard app that came out recently for Android does not really optimize itself for the two-screen layout. It only works in portrait mode. This sort of space missing, it's not ideal at the moment, and you'd think that Microsoft would be targeting their own hardware and doing something really impressive. It's pretty cool to be able to use the pen, but I wouldn't say it's really optimized for the 3x2 displays and the Surface Duo 2 screen. You can't really, I think, very effectively use it in the landscape mode. You've got to be in portrait.
Yeah.
So that's one example again. The other thing that I've found probably a little bit problematic is just the way app spanning works. Now, there's some settings in the Surface Duo 2 that allow you to say, when you open this app, it opens across the two screens, which is great. That's perfect. But Outlook, things like that you can do as well. And you can even do app sets or pairs of apps that open together. But I just find that, say, if you had Kindle open and then you click on a link and you open a web page or something like that, it always goes back to single screen. And it's like, it's not really what I want. And I don't even know what the logic should be or how it could be better. But there's a few things like that I find that are a bit, sort of surprising or jarring. You get used to those things. You get used to fixing them and working your way around them pretty quickly. So I guess the big question, those are sort of the key things that I'm seeing on the Surface Duo 2 as issues. They're not showstoppers, right? They don't stop us, as you say, from getting things done. They don't really harm your productivity in general.
Yeah, probably the only other one I wanted to talk about briefly, Brett, was this is probably one of my favourite postures to use the Duo in. It's sort of, it's like a small open book, right? So I've got the little finger on the inside balancing it, right? And I have had a couple of apps in particular, a couple of times where this left-hand screen here will turn off.
Yes, of course.
It thinks that we've folded it all the way around like that, and it's saying, hey, double tap to switch these two screens. And I have found on occasion that you'll actually see the notifications at the top right-hand corner switch sides backwards and forwards there's obviously something going on in here which goes, I'm not sure which screen I'm on. So there is obviously, again, just some of those software bugs that again, I've found the fix for that is just to close and open it again and it comes back. Yeah. But a little bit of a bug.
Unfortunately, like when you close it, it's going to lock the screen. But that fingerprint reader on the power button is so fast and awesome. It's so easy to unlock the phone. This is the easiest phone to unlock that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's so quick and responsive that way. So yeah, fortunately, that workaround is not too burdensome. Yeah. So in general, look, there definitely are bugs. This is not a polished phone, and a lot of people are rightly sort of a bit aggro at Microsoft. I don't know if our American audiences will understand that terminology, but a bit angry, we'll say, with Microsoft for not producing a phone that's slick and polished at this stage for that sort of money, the sort of money that they're asking for it. And I get that. This is for people who are really, really committed to the vision of what's possible with two screens and really want to be on the bleeding edge and test out new technology. Yes, it's the second generation, but it's still early days. We're going to see a customized version of Android, or a specific fork of Android, I should say, that's developed specifically for this scenario. Google are obviously invested in it as well to be able to do that in the idea of two screens. And obviously you've got other devices like the Samsung, the Fold 3 range and so forth. You've got other companies like I think Huawei have come out with dual screen phones as well. People are going down this path. Companies are going down this path. So we will see as Android evolves, more polished there on the software, and also, you know, the Microsoft stuff on top of that will adapt to suit. I think the thing to bear in mind, you know, people sort of think like Microsoft, what, $2.5 trillion company, something like that. Surface is a tiny division within the bigger picture of Microsoft, right? And the Surface Duo is even a smaller slice of that. This is very, like I said, bleeding edge. It's almost experimental. There will be probably hundreds of people working on a device like this, but in the scheme of things, it's not like Apple, where you've got, you know, tens of thousands of people working on every iPhone iteration, or Samsung doing the same thing for every iteration of their phones. This is a smaller proposition, and you can see that Microsoft are really heavily leaning on their ODMs, their device manufacturers, to come up with a lot of this sort of stuff as well. When the concept gets bigger and more people adopt it, more people come to the party, we'll see a lot more polish applied. We'll see a bigger presence from Microsoft investing in this as well.
I mean, even just talking about these bugs, Brett, I mean, it's pretty impressive, given, as you say, this is you know, for want of a better term, an experimental device. It's a what can we do device.
And there's
nothing we've found. There's nothing we've talked about that turns it into a showstopper. Right? There's nothing here that's made me put the device away or gone, oh, what a waste. I wish I hadn't have done this. Exactly. And I get why some of the consumer bloggers will want to go back to what they're familiar with and comfortable with, and what works from a social media perspective and a consuming perspective. But yeah, I'm finding this device just constantly changes the way that I think about mobile technology and the way I'm using and engaging with my digital life from a phone-based perspective. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I say that like it's an experimental device, not to justify that, you know, it's not polished, right? Because we all want it to be polished. I think, you know, Microsoft want it to be polished. I'm sure internally they're well aware of the issues and the feedback that people are giving. There'd be plenty of you know, Teams calls going on about that on a daily basis. But being such an early iteration of a concept, it's never going to be smooth. It cannot be smooth, right? And, you know, if people think that that it can be, well, you know, that's not how technology works. It's not how things play out. Again, if you want to go back and look at the first iPhone, iPhone 1, you know, did anybody ever see one? No, because yes, I did actually, but they were rubbish, right? So, but they were interesting at the time, and obviously look what that's become. Will the Surface Duo 3, 4, 5 become what iPhone is? Probably not, but it will open up a niche within the market for people who want to achieve more on their phones. And at the moment, you're going to have to look over a few little glitches and issues like this to do that.
Just even thinking about the concept of, you know, this is a new form factor in a device, right? So it's not possible to be polished at 100% for what the potential of this device is. It's just not.
We don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is.
We don't actually know what it is.
Yeah, we don't know what it is. We don't understand how people are going to use it. We don't understand what could be done with it. So how could it possibly be
We've got
polished?
Plenty of ideas about it, but what's it actually, you know, what are people really going to do with it? Yeah, cool. Well, anyway, if you're interested in more discussion about devices like the Surface Duo 2, make sure that you hit like, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'll be back next week with another video on how you can use the Surface Duo 2 as a pocketbook device with Microsoft OneNote. So join us for that.